might pick a pastor for a church or select the head of a new university. And, the first time, that's pretty much how it worked out. The campaign, such as it was. In 1789, America was like a newborn babe, and because its birth pains included a bloody and divisive war, a calming paternal figure was needed. The only one who really fit the bill was Commander-in-Chief George Washington, who, even back then, was being called the father of his country. Washington was not happy about his role as the anointed one. He was a genuinely reluctant leader who, at age 56, thought he was too far past his prime to undertake such a challenge. As he told his future Secretary of War, Henry Knox, "My movement to the chair of government will be accompanied by feelings not unlike those of a culprit who is going to the place of his execution." But Washington had presided over the Constitutional Convention, which met in Philadelphia in 1787, to create a coherent democratic governing system. His friends, Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, convinced him that America needed his presence, if only to make sure that the gains of the Revolutionary War did not disappear in factional infighting between states' rights advocates and those who favored a strong central government. Never mind that the general had some decidedly undemocratic ways, such as his habit of referring to himself in the third person, like an 18th-century Julius Caesar, his dislike of shaking hands, he preferred bowing, and his ownership of slaves. Washington was the chosen man. The first presidential election in American history was also the quickest. There was no popular vote. One would not be held until 1824. Rather, following rules set down in the newly ratified Constitution, each state appointed presidential electors in January 1789, except New York, which failed to appoint its allotted 8 electors by the deadline, and so sat out the first election. With the first electoral college thus established, electors cast 2 votes for 2 people, a point that became extremely controversial in early American history. The man who received the most votes would be president. The man with the second most amount would be vice president. The only hint of skullduggery came from the crafty Alexander Hamilton. He urged electors to waste their second votes on candidates not even in the running, to ensure that his rival John Adams, patriot and framer of the Declaration of Independence, would have no chance of becoming president. The winner, George Washington. Hamilton's strategy was quite unnecessary, for Washington had everything sewn up from the beginning and walked away with all 69 electoral votes. All Hamilton really accomplished was to royally tick off John Adams. He would later complain about the scurvy manner in which he had been made vice president. These grumblings foreshadowed things to come, but for the time being all was wonderful. Washington made his triumphal entry into New York City, the nation's temporary capital, on April 30th, 1789. Thousands of spectators thronged the road that led from Mount Vernon, cheering and tossing flowers. The first president was ferried across the Hudson River on an enormous barge manned by 13 white-smocked sailors. The barge was surrounded by a veritable flotilla of ships, filled to the gunwales with celebrants who sang Washington's praises to the spring skies. In more ways than one, the election of 1789 was the smoothest sailing an American presidential candidate would ever have. Of course, the sailing wasn't completely smooth. The acerbic John Adams did claim that the only reason Washington was chosen for everything was that he was taller than anyone else in the room.